Hello and welcome to this edition of Fulton Justice. I'm your host, Yolanda Lewis, District Court Administrator for the Atlanta Judicial Circuit. This program is dedicated to providing you with resources, information, and a closer look at how our justice system works for you. Today we'll take a look at the advantages of continued investment in alternative treatment programs here in Fulton County. In March 2013, the Superior Court launched its Veterans Court program with more than $750,000 in funding from the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration. Through Veterans Court, the Fulton County Accountability Court can now offer a multifaceted clinical intervention program for veterans who have entered the criminal justice system as a result of addiction, post-traumatic stress disorder, serious mental illness, and/or other co-occurring disorders. This is the first program of its kind in Metro Atlanta and the fifth Veterans Court offered in the state of Georgia. The program collaborates with the United States Department of Veterans Affairs, the Veterans Benefits Administration, and veterans support organizations in an effort to provide the best possible outcome for the participants in the Veterans Court program. Stay with us as we are joined by our guests to discuss how Veterans Court is giving back to servicemen and women one person at a time. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Fulton Justice. Joining us now is Judge Todd Markle of the Superior Court of Fulton County and the lead presiding jurist assigned to handling cases in the newly established Veterans Court. Thank you for being here, Judge Markle.
Good morning. Thank you for having me, Ms. Lewis.
So, before we talk a little bit about Veterans Court, because it's an exciting program for our jurisdiction, tell us a little bit about you. How did you get into law and how did you become one of the judges on the Superior Court bench?
Well, I practiced law in Atlanta for about 20 years, and I was honored to be asked to become the executive counsel to Governor Deal in late 2010 following his election. And while I was counsel, I chaired the Criminal Justice Reform Council, and while that was going on, this spot opened up on the bench here in Fulton County, and I was tapped and nominated to become a judge.
Awesome. And it's really interesting that you talk about the work of the committee that you worked on, because what you do now with Superior Court, with the Veterans Court, kind of plays into some of those recommendations, correct?
It sure does. Actually, the Veterans Court is really a specialized accountability court to deal with issues that are unique to veterans. Sometimes it may be substance abuse, but it could also be something that arises from PTSD. So it ties in perfectly with what we were doing on the council and the recommendations that the governor, that were made by the council to the governor and implemented later by the General Assembly.
And interestingly enough, with your work on that committee, we were talking about how Georgia is so tough on crime. And some of the recommendations, of course, were to implement some accountability courts. Do you think that changed our I guess, perception of being tough on crime?
It might have changed the perception, but the reality is accountability courts are not dealing with, or they should not be dealing with, hardened criminals. What we want to do is make sure we have bed space in our prisons for those who need to be in prison, for the rapists, the murderers, the robbers, things like that. What we're trying to do, though, is to make sure that our prisons aren't full of people who have addictions and substance abuse issues. We want to treat those people in the community, if we can, and hopefully keep them out of prison and make sure that we preserve our beds in prison for those hardened criminals. So there may be a perception that we are being soft on crime, but I really don't think that's the case.
Absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about Veterans Court. This is a program that you have been the only presiding jurist that we've had because the program is so new. So tell us a little bit about the program and how it came to be.
Well, actually, through your efforts in helping us obtain a grant through the federal government, last fall, Fulton County obtained a grant for roughly $750,000 from the Bureau of Justice and another federal entity to implement our program. And we went live back in April, and I am the presiding judge. We have people that are moving through roughly an 18-month program that is overseen by a judge to make sure that they do what they're supposed to do. It's kind of a carrot and stick approach. There are graduated sanctions. So it's going well. We've actually been having hearings and following these men. Right now all of our clients are men, although it's open to anyone in the system. We've been following them since April, and it seems to be going real well.
Now, of course, this program really models the same accountability type model as the drug court and our behavioral health court, but there's a unique aspect to this court, and that's part of that is the mentoring program. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Our mentoring program really does make us unique because these folks are veterans. All of them have been successful earlier in their lives, and what we've discovered is that several of our defendants, our clients in the program, actually got their addictions while they were in the service, and they started drinking, starting using drugs. And so we really feel like we have an opportunity to serve them. And what we've been able to do is get folks, local veterans groups, to help us provide mentors, role models for these folks to follow them through their treatment and be there for them, be mentors, be counselors to a certain extent for these folks. And so we've really gotten community participation. Everybody feels strongly about veterans, so this is really an opportunity for not just the court, but the whole community to help out in getting these folks the treatment that they deserve.
And interestingly enough, you know, a lot of people want to get involved with accountability court programs. Our mentors have to go through a pretty extensive process, background checks and things of that nature, so it's not as easy as you would think.
That's right.
To become a mentor, right?
That's right. That's right. We've thought through it, and there is a procedure that is used to identify and train mentors, and everything seems to be going well. They've provided a great service, and we couldn't do what we do without them.
I want to talk a little bit about the type of cases that you see that come before the court. I know we're a felony court, but what type of cases do you see for the gentlemen who are coming before you?
Usually they are small-time drug offenses, possession offenses, but there could be numerous. There could be a history of drug offenses. They could be burglaries, petty thefts, things of that nature, but they all are felonies. Usually what happens, though, is these folks have hit rock bottom. They tend to be older in life. We're not dealing with a population that, for the most part, is in their 20s and 30s. These are older folks, and they've got a history of substance abuse and drug and alcohol issues. So, but they are, because of their backgrounds, their criminal histories, they are facing significant prison time. So that is who we typically see, and as I say, our program is 18 months, and because these are felonies, these folks, we have the time to supervise them because they would be facing a substantial amount of time in prison or on probation.
Now, what has been your most memorable moment so far? I know I've had a chance to come to the court, and it's an amazing change when you see the folks come and they do the Pledge of Allegiance, and of course, have other veterans there. What has been the most memorable moment for you?
Well, if I had to pare it down to one memorable moment, and there have been several, we had a gentleman that really, as I said, had hit rock bottom and really did not want to face up to the fact that he had some serious drug-related issues. And he was facing 10 plus years in prison on various felony charges. He'd already been in the prison system and really just didn't want to admit that he had a problem. And so we gave him a pretty stiff jail sentence based on his failure to follow some of the recommendations of his case managers and the treatment that was being recommended. And he came back, and I think we got his attention. I don't think that he really felt like we would put him in jail. He did. He saw that he had a problem, and the last I heard, he is actually working in a business with his son and is very skilled, has some carpentry and woodworking skills. So he has the ability to succeed, and I think we would have missed him had we just shuttled him off to prison.
Absolutely. Any major challenges that you think face this population of folks as they kind of exit the program?
Well, I think the challenge that they face is not unique to veterans, and that is there is a tendency for everybody to go back to their communities and start running around, hanging around with the same folks that got them, in a lot of cases, got them into the situation that they're in. So what the accountability courts and veteran courts in particular try to do is to change those behaviors and give those folks some skills, some real life skills to go back to their communities and distance themselves from the same patterns of behavior that they went through earlier, to get them in the workforce. We give them real job skills, and hopefully they can find jobs, become taxpayers, and supportive family members.
And so I know that you're the presiding judge, but any other judges involved in helping with this program?
Right now it's just me, but I have to give a shout out to two of our veterans. Judge Jackson Bedford, who is a Vietnam veteran, has been very helpful with our mentoring program. He really has spearheaded that with some of our local volunteers and has done a fantastic job and is very supportive. I also need to acknowledge that we have another, he's not a veteran, he is active, and that is Judge Ural Glanville, who has just come back from active duty in Afghanistan. He is in the Army Reserve and is actually going to be speaking at our Veterans Court this week.
Awesome. So any final thoughts? What do you believe will be important as we move forward with Veterans Court? I know we have a lot of folks that are a little bit older in our program, so they've served previously, but we're still in active conflict. So what do you think about the future of our program?
Well, I think the most important thing for us is we need to continue to grow the program and to be able to better identify those folks who might be eligible and have VA benefits that they're entitled to in the criminal justice system, to try to identify them and bring them into the program and get them help that they need. Fulton County, being the largest county in the state, has numerous veterans, so we can certainly support the program, but we're really in the process of trying to continue to grow it. So our biggest challenge is to try to identify those folks.
Well, thank you, Judge Markle. We appreciate you being here. Great work. Looking forward to continued success of the Veterans Program.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Up next, we'll be joined by Mr. Lee Brooks from the Accountability Court, as well as Mr. Steve Alonso, who's a client in our Veterans Treatment Program. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Our next guests are Mr. M. Lee Brooks, who is the Accountability Court Director for the Superior Court of Fulton County and is also in charge of the Veterans Court Treatment Program, and Mr. Steve Alonso, who is a client in our Veterans Treatment Program. Thank you both for being here today.
Thank you.
Well, Mr. Brooks, let's start with you. You are the Accountability Court Director, so tell us a little bit about what accountability courts are.
Currently, Fulton County has 4 accountability courts. We have the drug court, the behavioral health court, the veterans court, and we have a reentry program. The accountability courts are designed to provide treatment and case management to those that really don't need to be in prison per se. It's designed to provide a treatment component where we talk about substance abuse, life skills, all of those things that may be lacking with people who need this kind of service. And so it's an alternative incarceration program that really is designed to keep people out of prison.
And so interestingly enough, we're going to talk about the Veterans Court specifically, but your history is with the Atlanta Police Department, and so I think that this ties in well. So a lot of the people that you've seen come through the criminal justice system, does it make sense now to see this side of accountability courts?
Well, I'm a product of the 60s, and we were sort of called to service by President Kennedy, and so it's always been something I wanted to do, and I got into the criminal justice field, law enforcement specifically, with the idea of helping people. And I thought for the 30-year career that I had that I helped a lot of people there, but nothing compared to what we're doing with the accountability courts. If someone comes to graduation and listens to some of the stories that are being told, it's incredible what we're doing with these people. So it's great that as a 20-year-old I was helping people, and now at the end of my career I'm helping people as well. So it's been very satisfying for me.
And so tell me a little bit about the Veterans Program, because we have 4 different accountability court programs, but there's something very unique about Veterans Program. So tell me a little bit about our Vets Court.
The Vets Program, we started out with a core of about 14 veterans who were in our programs. We brought them together, and for some reason, they just bonded really well together. They became a very cohesive unit, supporting each other, helping each other during treatment, pushing each other to do the things that they needed to do. And because they were a small group, I think it worked a lot better with them because they were able to identify with each other and had similar backgrounds. All of them experienced sort of the same kinds of experiences in the military. And it really turned into a very, very cohesive group of people. So we're very, very pleased with that group.
Now, Judge Markle talked a little bit about the type of cases that you see. Tell us a little bit about the criteria for folks coming into the program.
Well, for veterans, a lot of people are under the belief that a veteran means someone who's actually been in combat, and that's not true. The criteria is anybody who has served in the military, in either armed forces for the United States, whether they're honorably discharged or dishonorably discharged, regardless of the discharge that they had, we will accept them into the program. The other criteria, the main criteria is that they have to be charged with a felony here in Fulton County for them to meet the criteria for our program.
And so when they complete the program, it's an 18-month program, and when they come to the point where they're graduating, then what?
Well, we have a 15-month treatment program, and then we have a 3-month what we call transitional support, where we support them while they reintegrate into the community. Once they graduate from that particular program, they get to go before Judge Markle, and Judge Markle handles their probated sentence, and oftentimes that sentence goes away and they're integrated back into the community. Hopefully they are clean and sober. They are very productive members of society. And they have jobs, they've been reestablished with their community and their families. So we hope that they've received a lot of life skills that they can take and continue to be productive citizens.
That's good. And so you've brought Mr. Alonso with you, who is one of our participants in the Veterans Program. And so, Mr. Alonso, can you tell us a little bit about your service in the Armed Forces?
I was in the service from 1986 to 1988. Stationed out in Schofield Barracks, Hawaii. I received the Army Achievement Medal, a Good Conduct Medal. I was honor grad at my advanced infantry training class and did joint exercises with the Thai, South Korean, and Australian Army while I was in the service.
Wonderful. Thank you for your service.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
So tell me a little bit about what led you into the criminal justice system.
What led me into the criminal justice system was that at a young age I introduced myself to alcohol and drugs, and it became a focus of me socializing. And it was fun in the beginning, but over the years, like as I became an addict and an alcoholic, it started to cause me trouble and suffer consequences. I was arrested for possession of cocaine this year. It had been a while since I'd gotten in trouble, about 17 years, but that's what brought me to the Veterans Court.
And so is this the first opportunity that you've had the opportunity for treatment?
I have been into AA and NA meetings before, but I never took it seriously, because what's been pointed out to me here at the Veterans Court is drugs and alcohol are my problem, but I'm actually the problem, and coming to accept that is opening a new window for me. And
so what has been the most important thing that you've been able to take from your time in the Veterans Court?
In the Veterans Court is the fact is that I am powerless over drugs and alcohol, but I am not powerless over myself. I have the ability to fix myself, and knowing that I'm the problem and I can fix myself, it gives me hope, and it gives me a goal to shoot for.
And so do you think programs like the one that you're participating in, is it important to our veterans and folks that are suffering addiction, who are just trying to kind of reacclimate into society?
Yes, ma'am. I do. I think it's the catalyst for change that I've needed for years, and I'm grateful that the Veterans Court program is available, because it does give me hope that I can change myself, and not just on willpower alone, because that's not going to work. I have to change my reaction to life, and the Veterans Court is going to help me do that.
And what are you looking forward to most when you graduate?
When I graduate, my goal, I like the mountains, so I want to go up and live in the mountains. I wouldn't mind getting a little parcel of land and farming and just having a simple life. I don't think that was going to be attainable before this happened, so I'm looking forward to that.
Well, keep up the good work. We're very glad that you're doing well in the program.
Thank you, Ms. Lewis.
So, Mr. Brooks, just some final thoughts. We talk about sometimes accountability courts being tough on crime, but I think your experience with this program is that a lot of people have a tough time getting through these programs.
A lot of the individuals that we have, the clients that we serve, are involved in crimes because of their addiction and their substance abuse. That's one of the criteria. We look at high risk, high need individuals, and a lot of them are involved in the criminal justice system because of their drug addictions. So getting them in, this is certainly not a soft program for them. There is a treatment component, but there's also a case management or a court supervision component to it. And as Mr. Alonso said, there are consequences for your behavior. But of all the accomplishments Mr. Alonso talked about, I think one of his greatest accomplishments is he's been a star client for us ever since the program has started. He's been receiving praise and accolades since the very beginning. So I think that's a great accomplishment for him as well.
And so what do you think about the future of accountability courts? You know, we talk about these programs being nationwide programs, and it has caught on in Georgia.
It has.
But what do you think is the future for accountability courts?
I think that we as a society, we simply can't just keep building prisons and locking people away and expecting something to change. The accountability courts are proven to work. We just got back from a national conference in Washington, D.C. There were over 4,000 participants there.
Wow.
It's growing nationwide. I don't think it is a fad. I think it is a trend that's going to continue to increase in the future, and I believe they work. So.
And in Fulton County, I know that our funding comes primarily from our county commissioners, and we supplement that with grant funding. But I think it's important to talk about funding, because if these programs are to continue, it certainly will take funding to do that. So what's the most important fact that you can give us back about why it's important to fund these programs?
The average cost to keep a person in the Fulton County Jail is about $93 a day. The average cost for our program is less than $20 a day. So when you look at it as a taxpayer, your money is better spent on accountability court programs where we can continue to keep them in the community, ensure public safety, treat them, change behavior, change lifestyle, and not just simply warehouse people in big institutions like the jail.
That's a very good point, and we appreciate your service.
Thank you.
Mr. Alonso, we appreciate you being here. Good luck as you move into the future of our program.
Thank you, Ms. Lewis.
Up next, we'll share our final thoughts on alternatives to incarceration and the Veterans Court. Stay tuned. Today we welcome two members of the Fulton County Superior Court System and also a client who's involved in the Veterans Court. Alternatives to incarceration are being used more frequently across the nation. While Veterans Court is an accountability court program, the unique aspect is the commitment to serve the men and women who have made the ultimate sacrifice for our country. It's important to note that just because punishment does not involve time in prison, does not mean that the courts are soft on crime. In fact, many clients understand that it is harder to change one's life and integrate back into society than to simply serve time in prison. The Veterans Court program provides treatment, guidance, and structure under a court-supervised program. This alternative approach to sentencing options has proven to be very effective with other offenders, and we expect no less for this program. We're extremely fortunate to have judges and staff who are truly committed, some of whom have served in our armed forces. Special thanks to our guests today, and join us next time for Fulton Justice.